attack the planet.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another TCM weekly Wednesday live stream. How's everyone doing today? I'm going to take a look at the chat. We have Geoffrey with the first comment of this week. Shortly after following that, we have Zero in second place. So welcome, everyone. How is everyone doing? Good question. I'm doing well. How's everyone else doing? Just getting used to the daylight savings still. I don't know. Depending on where you are, that started for us this past Sunday. So we lost an hour of sleep, basically. So it still feels like a Monday to me, even though we're midway through the week. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. So our schedule for today is we're going to do some Blue Team Labs online labs in a moment. But of course, we're going to kick off our stream here with a bit of Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat wherever you may be tuning in from. And then we'll do some labs, and we can kick off or we can cap off with some more Q&A in between and at the end. So just a chill stream today. Going to be hanging out, doing some USB analysis and some WordPress, what it looks to be WordPress analysis. We'll get to that momentarily. But hey, everyone. Welcome. Everyone's still trickling in. We have Arubius, the one and only. Welcome. We have some AppSec explained as well. I was just talking to Alex on a different call. Nice to see everyone joining in. $2 a.m. your time. That's nuts. He must be on the other side of the world from me. We're at just about noon here in my part of the world. Unless you're in Arizona. That's right. I don't think they have the daylight savings, or they don't yet. I'm not sure. Every part of the world is different. It seems like every part of North America, at least. And I know the UK has a different date that they switch over. It's just a mess. We got to get rid of the daylight savings. There's no point. It is nice to have some extra sun in the evening, I will say. Okay, you have too much sunlight in Arizona. That's fair. See, we have like 6 months of darkness almost. It's not as bad as like some like Norwegian territories and whatever, but in Canada it gets pretty dark throughout the winter, which kind of sucks. So it's nice to have some more sunlight. Why is VQL so rough as a language? You know what? I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately. Listen, Velociraptor is a great tool. It's a great incident response tool at scale, but yeah, it can be a bit of a pain to query what you're really looking for. There are other options for sort of remote instant response at scale, or even native solutions through like WMI or PowerShell that Yeah, it's hard to beat a tool like Velociraptor though in certain cases, but um, I imagine if you're not using it for its intended purpose, it might it might be a little bit harder for you as well. England is Mordor. What are we doing today? We're gonna do just a bit of Q&A. We're just chilling right now while people funnel in to the stream, and then we're gonna hop over to Blue Team Labs online, and I'll throw some links in chat when we move over there. But just before we kick off some Q&A, I do have some announcements I should make before we get too ahead of ourselves. I have to log back into my VM before I share my screen. So one thing I wanted to uh, mention is that the PHDA was released last week. That is our Practical Help Desk Associate certification, developed by Andrew Bellini, who also developed the Practical Help Desk course, which is a fantastic, I believe, 17-hour course, or maybe even longer at this point. But just like nothing really like it in the industry in terms of practical help desk knowledge and actually working with Active Directory environments and doing some of that system administration and user level sort of tasks that you would be required to do as a help desk professional. That's certainly where a lot of us at TCM started out, and it's where I started out myself. And I think it's a fantastic way to either enter the industry or just as a career path as well. It can be really rewarding as well. I really enjoyed my time in help desk. I learned quite a bit. Um, Although I was in a pretty small organization, so I was really tasked to wear many hats. But yeah, this certification is really cool. I got to test it out, sort of beta it myself before it came out, and I really love the way that Bellini put it together. It's extremely practical. You're actually working on tickets. There's literally a ticketing system that you're working on to answer things. So there's really no other supplement really other than the actual job experience you're getting. So really, really, really cool to see this certification in our lineup. So I just wanted to shout that out. Definitely check it out if you enjoyed the Practical Help Desk course, which is on our free tier. So even if you don't do the certification, but you want to learn sort of that foundation, that sort of A+ level knowledge, you could say, definitely check out the free tier. You're really no cost other than your time, which is well worth it with this course. We also have, just about to cap off here, is the PNPT live training that Heath and Alex is presenting next week, right? It's the 17th. So that's really coming up. So, and we only have, I think, 3 slots left. So this is going to close up very soon. So I wanted to mention that if you do want to get sort of your hands onto that live training that really walks you through not only the PJPT, but also the PNPT sort of curriculum and cohort there. This is an excellent way to sort of accelerate, no pun intended, your journey there. You'll also get basically 4 exam vouchers. You'll get the 2, of course, the free retake for the PJPT and the PNPT as well. So again, a really good way to sort of get yourself sorted through there. So if you have some employer budget or training budget for the start of the year that you want to use up, this is a fantastic way to do that and get your hands on both of those very valuable certs. We also have our bundles as well. So that's my other announcement here is I think we did it back in Black Friday or around Christmas time. We introduced these bundles and they were very popular. So back by popular demand until April 1st, we're bringing back both the Professional Penetration Tester bundle and the Ultimate Hacking and Defending Training bundle, which is basically all of our certs. So some great bundles there. Again, if you have the sort of training budget to take, these are, you're including a lot of certifications here, so it's obviously going to be more expensive than just a certification, a single one. So, but very value-wise, extremely worth it if you are in the market for getting your hands on a bunch of training. And so with that, spoilering a little bit here, but we will hop over that in a moment. I'm going to jump into some of the pin questions we might have before we jump into the actual lab for today. How do I learn cybersecurity as a 15-year-old? That is a good question. The fact that you have an interest like that at 15 years old is great. You have a great head start opposed to a lot of people. I wish I knew what I wanted to do when I was 15. But honestly, just find a good beginner course if you're extremely new to the field. I just talked about the practical help desk course as well that we have on our free tier. So if you're really new, like brand new to IT networking, and you really don't have that fundamental knowledge, that would be my suggestion. Again, it's a free course. It leads nicely into a lot of it sort of builds up that foundation, and then you can sort of go for again a more beginner focused cybersecurity oriented course. Whether it be you want to be on the penetration testing side or the maybe analysis or blue team side or forensics, stuff like that. So there's a bunch of different paths you can go down. You don't need to know exactly what you want to do right away. Again, you're very young, so interests can change over time. So I would expose yourself to as many sort of avenues that you can go down. So again, a good beginner course will do that for you, and then you can sort of identify which areas you might want to pursue, and sort of you'll have different resources depending on where you want to go. But yeah, a good beginner course would be great for that. Obviously, a little bias here, but the TCM courses we have are excellent. So again, we often recommend after you do something like the foundations, like with the practical help desk, for example. If you want to go sort of the ethical hacking route, of course, we have the practical ethical hacking course. If you want to go the blue team route, we're starting to introduce some more courses on the blue side as well. So, of course, the SOC 101. We also have some forensics and detection engineering courses as well, which are a little bit more advanced. But again, there are pathways and roadmaps there. What was the first Sherlock you completed? I can't remember, but I know I did one few streams ago. But I can't remember the first one I ever did. But I really do like the Sherlocks. They're super cool. We're not going to do one today. We're going to stick with the security blue team sort of cyber range. I like to just mix it up every now and then because I am kind of running out of some of the free retired challenges that I can do. But fortunately, there's still quite a few left. But um, any thoughts on the job market for blue teamers? Not really. I mean, I'm not in sort of an application scenario where I'm like trying to land a job. So I don't actually have like in-depth kind of knowledge into what it's actually like. But I know just anecdotally that it's extremely hard at the moment for basically any kind of role you want to go into. There's oversaturation. Uh, People talk about the market all the time, but it is very hard. It's getting increasingly hard. I know. I felt like it was hard when I was getting into the industry, but I'm sure it was much easier back then than it is now. So I do feel for people, but my best advice I can give is just be the most competitive person you can by sort of expanding out your value in terms of experience wise or education wise or certification and training wise, and also project based stuff as well. So the more sort of stones you can hit as you're applying, the more likely you'll be able to sort of get through some of those initial hurdles, which can be quite a pain, especially nowadays. Do I still need to know a little bit of blue team stuff as an offset guy? I mean, short answer is yes. But the more intricate answer is it depends. Um, like the more sort of offensive security stuff you do in penetration, the more natural it's going to be for you to understand things on the blue side, right? Like you might not be going into detection engineering and learning how to write rules to detect attacks, but you will understand sort of at the foundational level. If you are a good ethical hacker or a sort of offensive security oriented person, you will inevitably be pretty accustomed to learning some of the blue side as well, just through exposure and stuff like that. But I always think it is a good idea to sort of get a grasp on both sides. But obviously within balance, within reason, right? If you want to be a penetration tester and you want to go that route, I would focus on that first. Rather than sort of trying to build up everything at once. I think a lot of people can sort of get lost in this idea of analysis paralysis, where it's like, you have so much to learn, and so it's hard to focus on one thing. I definitely been there. I definitely felt that before. So, I wouldn't drop everything to learn some more blue team stuff if you feel it's lacking. I would just keep going in the direction you're going. And if you need to supplement later on, you can definitely do that. What certifications do you recommend for going into blue team? That is the question of the day. Of course, there are so many nowadays, right? Seems like there's a new blue team oriented certification coming out every week or every month. So I don't really have an answer other than like a specific suggestion. Obviously, I would be very biased towards the practical SOC analyst associate at TCM, but I really don't think you can go wrong these days, as long as you're getting a practical certification, right? So not multiple choice. If you're doing the work, you're sort of getting that experience through the training and certification. I think that's, you can't really go wrong. There's only, there's a set number of like avenues and set number of methodologies and tools that you kind of want to pick up as a someone just getting into the field as sort of an analyst. And so there's going to be overlap, right, between all of these. I don't think it's necessary to sort of like Pokemon badge, gym, collect all of the certifications at that entry level. It's sort of the value is sort of fleeting as you get more, right? So I don't think you need to overlap too much. I mean, I would just pick a good one that falls in line with the way you like to learn, right? So if you're a video-based learner, well, we sort of cater to that more at TCM. All of our courses are completely practical, hands-on, and video-based. If you're more of a text-based person, there are other a ton of other options for that as well, right? So it really just depends on the way you like to learn best. I don't think you can go wrong from a material perspective in terms of like, if I take this course, I'm going to be completely missing out on this sort of thing, right? I think they all pretty much, sort of hit the mark there these days. Oh, good question here from Victor. How important is communication within cybersecurity? I think it is the most important soft skill that you can have. Um, Communication and documentation are sort of rolled up into the same thing in my mind. Your ability to sort of communicate findings or communicate work that needs to be done or update your teams, stuff like that. The communication is involved in every step of the way, all throughout incident response, all throughout analysis and investigations, all throughout penetration testing as well, right? Doesn't matter what side of the coin you're on. That is, in my mind, the top sort of soft skill that you can have. And it's one that is hard to sort of work on. Without having experience, right? So collaboration experience, so working with others. But again, you don't need to be sort of employed to do that sort of thing and sort of get experience and get sort of ways that you can talk about how, you communicate well, because that is sometimes one of those questions, at least in my experience, that come up in interviews is, give me a time where you, displayed good communication or something like that, or tell me about your communication style, those kind of questions. So, work on projects with teams, collaborate, um, uh, there are a bunch of different things you can do. If there's a local OWASP group, for example, again, just work with others, network, that kind of thing. Communication is involved in sort of any step of the way there, and I think it is very important. Are free certifications helpful? It depends, right? Like, what I value more when I'm sort of evaluating a certification or like any kind of training is, again, the actual training that's involved with in it, right? So, um, uh, I think certifications should have training included, and a lot of them do these days, which is nice to see. Um, but again, at the end of the day, if your certification that you're paying for does not include training along with that, it's sort of like you need to learn this and then take our exam. It's like, what are you really sort of paying for other than the opportunity to put that name on your resume, right? So I value training a lot more than I value just like the letters or the name of a certification to put on a resume, for example, because the training itself, what I actually take away from a course, for example, is what I'm going to take away with and be able to apply in different cases, right? Whether it be on the job or within different projects and stuff like that. So in terms of that question specifically, like it just depends on sort of industry recognition at that point, right? So if you're not really concerned about training and more concerned about what can I put on a resume in terms of a certification name, it would just depend on doing some research in your area and seeing, does this certification come up in job postings as sort of a requirement or a nice to have, that kind of thing, right? So it is hard to sort of evaluate in that case. It's either, are you doing this for the HR recognition, or are you doing it for the actual experience of the training and what you actually take away from it? And it's a fine line sometimes, I find. All right. Andrew Gang checking in. Yeah, we have myself, another Andrew. We have digital Andrew as well. Oh, that's a good question that I just pinned there. With the current challenging job market for security and tech roles, do you think it's now more important to have some entry level tech experience like help desk before transitioning into SOC? Yeah, I mean, I've always held that sort of belief, and I know it can be a little bit contentious at times, where people say, I didn't have to work in help desk and I got a role right away. So, so I know a lot of people can have different opinions. In my case, I sort of did the traditional route of working in help desk, then sort of working into system administration and networking, and then sort of moving in and pivoting into security afterwards. And I felt that I really benefited from my time in help desk specifically, because not only did that teach me, the foundations of how operating systems work and how to diagnose and troubleshoot Windows systems and even some Linux administration as well. But it just taught me how to problem solve is the thing that I really took from that. Because especially in my circumstance, where I was sort of someone wearing many hats in a small to medium sized business, and I was only the sort of only in-house kind of IT person, I didn't really have anyone to call, and I didn't really have any documentation to go off of, or like a playbook in a sense, right? So I was really, Google was my best friend at that role, and I learned so much just by trying to problem solve and trying to figure out how to ask the right questions, and looking up error messages, or looking up diagnosing things at sort of the endpoint and also operating system level. So that's why I always say, like, it was my biggest takeaway and my best experience there. And I feel like it made me a much stronger analyst because of that. Because again, I sort of ingrained that way, how to ask the right questions, how to search for what I'm looking for, which is a skill in itself, right? To be able to search the correct terms or search the correct things to pull back exactly what you're looking for, and sort of do that research on your own. Anytime I see someone send me a screenshot of an error message that just has the most blatant reasoning in the error message, I just lose some brain cells, right? It's like, take that string, put it into Google, and you will find the answer, because it's very rare that you're the novel person finding coming across an error, right? So, yeah, I really think some sort of help desk, or maybe some entry level tech kind of role, even like a development role, or even anything in that regard, is going to really set you up nicely. Is it a requirement? No. But is it? Do I personally find that it really benefited myself? Yes. Yeah, that's a good point here. Help desk will teach you how a company works in general. A lot of SOC analysts go into a role when they provide guidance to a client. They don't understand how a corporate environment works. Yes, and that's one of the toughest things, even from like a pedagogy perspective as well, is um, trying to instill that within students as well, because it's you can learn the tools, right, and the methodologies of, like, this is how we do network traffic analysis, this is how we can dig into a PCAP, or this is how we can sort of hunt for malware at the endpoint level. But again, there's so much process and higher level baggage that sort of comes with dealing with an enterprise and even a small to medium sized business, that it can be a kind of a shock for some people who haven't experienced that kind of thing before. And I know a lot of other people who have worked in help desk as well kind of felt that same kind of thing, where it really just exposed them to sort of how, this is how domains work. This is how, GPOs are rolled out, for example, that kind of thing. So there is a whole other side of it that really, I think, can flesh out a stronger analyst. Oh, it's awesome to see. My PSA report is still under review. Best of luck. It can take a few days to get that back. So I know the waiting game is the toughest part. I'm also waiting for some results for a different certification at the moment. So I know the feeling. I'm in the same position. And thank you very much for taking it. I hope you really enjoyed the exam. That's awesome to see. The comments he is reading are from the YouTube stream. Some of them are, but we fortunately get all of the different avenues sort of funneled in. So I do see your comment, although it is from Twitch. So don't worry. We see them from all over the place. All right. Let us, before we lose track of time, let's hop over to our labs that we're going to be doing. And so let me maximize this. All right. And I lost myself. Great. There we go. All right. All right. So yeah, what we're going to be doing is some of the blue team's labs. I think we're going to try to do 2 here just because they look kind of short when I was going through them. And yeah, the link is in chat there. You can also see it here. If you just go to blueteamlabs.online, you should be able to find the challenges there. We're going to be doing all free and retired challenges, so there shouldn't be any barriers to entry there. You might just need to register an account if you do want to follow along. But yeah, I've been enjoying some of the Blue Team Labs online stuff I've done on previous streams, so I thought I would check out some of the other free ones. But we are running out of some of the available labs. Is this a free lab? Yep, it is. So you'll be able to follow along. If you head over to the challenges page, you can just click on, whoops, don't click on active, I have to click on retired. I shouldn't be streaming an active box, right? And I'm going to do the free ones as well. And then there are a few, I don't think there are any hard ones, so I'm going to stick to medium. And we've done this one before, the ransomware, on a previous stream. But this one looked interesting to me, the USB stick. So that's what I'm going to start with. And then when I opened it up, I noticed there aren't too many questions, so this might actually be pretty quick. And so the other one I saw that was interesting was the compromised WordPress. So if we have time, we'll get to that one as well. But we'll start out with this USB one. I don't know if we're going to be doing some forensics or just looking at a drive. I think that's more likely what we're going to be doing here. But we'll see how it goes. All right, so let me zoom in here. What is the scenario here? So one of our clients informed us they recently suffered an employee data breach. As a startup company, they had a constrained budget allocated for security and employee training. That sounds familiar to previous organizations. I visited them and spoke with the relevant stakeholders. I also collected some suspicious emails and a USB drive an employee found on their premises. Ooh, that's like some Mr. Robot stuff, dropping some malicious USBs in the parking lot. While I'm analyzing the suspicious emails, can you check the contents of the USB drive? Sure. You have some reading material here that might come in handy. Some list of file signatures, yeah. Pretty familiar with that. Some Lenny Zeltzer stuff, so to analyze malicious documents. So we'll consult the reading material if we need to, but this seems like a pretty cool challenge, and maybe we'll learn why we shouldn't just plug in random USBs into our systems. Although that was more of a problem in older versions, but still, obviously, you don't want to be doing that. So we can download the USB image here with the password of BTLO, and there's also going to be another zip file within that with the password of infected. So I'm just going to copy this link here. You can just click download if you want to do it through the browser, but I'm just going to, I'll just do it on the desktop. Just going to wget that link, and we should have the zip downloaded, and then I'm going to unzip it with the password of BTLO. There we go. And so we now have this directory here with the suspicious USB. So I'll jump into there. Yeah, Mr. Robot comes to mind. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Okay. And we also have this USB.zip, so we need to unzip that as well with the password of infected. That should be good. Okay. And within this, we have an auto run directory. Let me zoom in a bit. So this seems to be the USB, which is interesting. We have an autorun.inf file, which is pretty intriguing. And it looks like we have a PDF as well. So if you're not familiar, the autorun.inf file, I think it's for like USB storage drives, right? And I think in older versions of Windows, you could sort of abuse this to automatically execute a file or some sort of file or executable, right, or script. And I think by default they've disabled this in newer versions because of this exact thing. It was sort of a common attack to sort of execute malware when you sort of plug in an infected drive, right? And so we should be able to find some interesting things within that file and perhaps within this readme.pdf as well. And so, and jump over to the questions. What file? Yeah, so what file is the autorun.inf file running? I think they're just text files that point to specific files. So we can probably just cat it out or use something like strings, right? Actually, if we run file against it, we should see, yeah, so it's a Microsoft Windows auto run file. We could also just, Google autorun.inf. Should be able to find something interesting here. Again, yeah, a text file that instructs Windows to automatically run applications when a removable media like a CD or DVD or USB stick is inserted, right? Sort of associated with this auto run and autoplay feature within Windows, right? And I'm sure we could find some interesting discussions and some write-ups here about it. But let's figure out what file is it running. So again, I'm just going to run strings against it. This should be pretty easy. Yep, there we go. Same kind of thing, I think, if we just cat out the file. It's just text. And so you can see it's an auto run sort of entry here, and it's opening what looks to be the readme.pdf file. It looks like they've also set an icon here for the sort of, default auto run icon file. So when you sort of see it on your desktop or when you open it up and explore that USB, you should see that, auto run icon file. And apparently when you open it up, it's going to point to that readme.pdf file that we also saw in the same directory or the same drive, right? If we think of this as an image of that USB drive, these were the files contained within it. So when you plug it in, it's going to sort of kick off this auto run file, which is going to then say, hey, I want to open up this PDF. So very simple, right? Nothing too crazy at this point. We just sort of identified, hey, what file is being opened? And there were only 2 files there. So maybe they should have included some more like decoy files so we could actually, it's pretty assumed that the only other file here might be run, but whatever, I digress. So what file is the auto run file running? We have readme.pdf. Does the PDF file pass a virus total scan? Well, that's pretty simple as well, right? So again, now we're focused on this PDF, right? Because we know, this is just saying, hey, I want to run this file. And so now I want to figure out, what is this file? And we could, open up this PDF, see what's in it. Maybe there's a link that it's asking user to click on, or some sort of, suspicious, activity going on within the PDF. But let's stick to the command line here and sort of triage this as we would sort of more safely. And so what we can do is just run, first let's run file against it. Make sure it's a PDF, which we can see sort of based on those magic bytes or those file headers that we saw sort of in that reference. This is in fact a PDF document. So it's going into the sort of hex content of the file and pulling out, hey, what does this file start with? And do those bits sort of line up with what is expected for a PDF? So that's sort of how it's figuring that out. But the question is this a malicious file in regards to virus total, right? So we can just get a hash value of this file, which is very simple to do. We can run something like SHA-256-SUM. Again, this is very basic triage stuff, nothing crazy here. We can also run something like MD5-SUM, depending on what, MD5-SUM, depending on what kind of hashing algorithm we want to grab, right? So it shouldn't really matter in this case. So just copy the MD5-SUM, head over to virus total. Again, if you just want to check sort of the disposition of a file based on a number of, antivirus engines, virus total is the best place to sort of do that, right, at scale. And in this case, it looks like if we're seeing a lot of red, I always say if you're seeing a lot of red here, that is not a good sign, because we can see 42 out of the 62 security vendors here, which are all listed here. So we have things like Avast, Bitdefender, Fortinet, eScan, all these kind of different antivirus engines have sort of flagged this file as malicious. And some of them have not. Maybe they just couldn't access their API or whatever it uses for virus total. But that's a good majority of what's going on here. So we can safely assume that this is a malicious file in some way or another. We could also look at the sort of details of the file itself, right? So we can get the other hash values just from virus total, which is cool, right? So let's say we only had an MD5 hash, but we needed to, for some reason, figure out the SHA-256, right? Maybe our EDR tool only captures the SHA-256 value and we have no way of getting it. Again, if we find a match on virus total, we can usually grab it from there too. We also see things like, some different, more fuzzy hashing algorithms as well, which is cool. file type, right? So it's looking at the magic bytes once again. So a lot of metadata about the file we can also glean or grab from VirusTotal as well. We can see other names it was submitted as, right? So in this case, we just have a readme.txt. We have the hash itself, which is usually done when you're sort of virus scanning a file. And we can see sort of the history of when it was first analyzed and when it was last analyzed, for example. We can see different relations, right? So are there any contacted domains when the file executes? So you would actually need to upload a file into VirusTotal to be able to perform this kind of more sandboxing behavior. It's not exactly sandboxing what you're doing here, but it is sort of getting some of that from different sandboxes that it has sort of access to. We can also see behavior as well. And so we could really deep dive into this and see, hey, what different IP addresses are being contacted? We might see a lot of benign sort of Adobe IPs if this was open in sort of, Adobe Reader or whatever. But it can be a useful area to look at as well. But in this case, very simple, true or false. Does the PDF pass a VirusTotal scan? I think that's false. That question tripped me up for a second. I was like, wait, is it true or false? We know it's malicious. That's all. Does the file have the correct magic number? Oh, cool. So we were just looking at that, right? So this is what I wanted to open up too. So if you just Google like list of file signatures or magic headers or magic file signatures, a bunch of different ways you can refer to it. It's basically the sort of starting bits of a file that allow you to sort of identify what kind of file it is, right? And so you can see we have a ton of examples here. So for example, in SQLite format, if we're looking at an SQLite database, the file is always going to start with these sort of values here, right? This sort of hex signature. And we can basically look at any kind of file here, right? So we have different JPEGs, right? So we have this weird set of strings, for example, which you might actually have seen before if you were ever looking at a JPEG file in some sort of application that doesn't support rendering images. You might see the actual, represented string of the hex bytes, right? But in this case, we can look, just do a search for PDF. I wanted to highlight this comment. This was really good. Yeah, reminder to only search the hash. You don't want to upload random company PDFs to VirusTotal if there's private info in the PDFs. Yeah, that's a great point. Also a point I like to bring up as well, too, because you don't always know what's going to be contained in the file, right? So if you just upload something that you got from a phishing email in your company, for example, that might include, potentially personal information about an employee that was being targeted, right, in a targeting phishing attack. It could include information about the company itself, right? You don't really want to do that as well. It could also tip off the attacker, which you might not want to do if you're dealing with a more sophisticated attacker. If they figured out that you're sort of onto them, they might resort to other methods that maybe you don't have as much detection into, right? So a ton of different reasons why you might not want to upload a file, especially on the free version of VirusTotal. I think you might be able to pay, if you pay the sort of premium subscription, you might be able to upload private files. I know you can do that on things like Joe Sandbox and AnyRun. VirusTotal might be the same. But if you do have that premium subscription on VirusTotal, you can download anything submitted, basically, which is a potential concern. So good point there. So the magic bytes, or the magic header, file signature, whatever you want to call it, for a PDF are these characters here, which are sort of represented by this 25, 50, 44, 46, 2D, right? So again, we didn't really need to dive into that as well, but I just wanted to showcase what that looks like. Again, we really could just run the file command against README, and it's going to do that same check for us and basically say, hey, I match this in my sort of internal database here. This matches to a PDF document. But we could also run something like XXD to actually look at the hex content of readme.pdf. And if we print that out, we're going to get sort of all of the sort of hex data and ASCII representation here on the right. So if we just want to look at the first line or the first few bytes here, I can just pipe it over to head and just say, hey, I want to grab the first line here, which of course, in this case, refers to that %PDF-1, which is what we saw here, or just with the dash. And if we sort of look at the bytes itself, it's going to be 25, 50, 44, 46, which we can see here, 25, 50, 44, 46, 2D, right? So that does appear to be a match. This is a legitimate PDF document. In some cases, you might see files masquerading as other files, right? It might be an executable, but it has a different file extension, or something like that, or a script that doesn't have its proper extension and it's sort of masquerading as a different file. It's not until you look at the actual bytes of the file or that file signature that you realize, hey, this is some sort of obfuscation attempt in a way, which sometimes doesn't work, right? So in this case, does it have the correct magic number? Yes, it does. Now, what OS type can the file exploit? It looks like Linux, Mac OS, or Windows. I think we're going to need to do some more investigation into the file itself to figure that out. We can assume based on the auto run kind of thing, it's Windows targeting. But we can also, I assume we're going to have to look into the PDF itself later on anyway. So let's not assume things while we still have some work to do, right? So again, we have the readme.pdf, which is a legitimate PDF file, but there might be something contained inside of it. It could be a URL, it could be an embedded document, right? It could be an actual embedded executable or script, or it could be some malicious JavaScript or some malicious open action that's taking place. Again, I'll just mention, we actually do this exact kind of thing in the SOC 101 course. We take a look at some malicious PDF documents that have embedded attachments or embedded URLs, and we look at how we can safely extract them. So just thought I would mention that, which is why I'm sort of familiar with doing this kind of thing. But it is pretty simple. There are just some, free simple utilities or scripts that you can run, typically Python tools, just to dig in and carve into PDF documents to find that kind of thing. So you don't actually have to open it up and potentially expose yourself to clicking on a malicious link or an open action running something in a vulnerable PDF viewer, for example, which are few and far between, but it is one of those things to sort of be concerned about. And so to sort of dig into the contents or the structure of this PDF, I like to use the PDF ID tool. So let me just figure out what to Google here. If you just Google PDF ID, you're going to look for a Didier Stevens tool. And he has his own blog that he hosts it on as well. But also I just go over to the GitHub here. So if you just search for PDF ID, you should find that GitHub repository with this script right here. So I'm just going to grab this and make a copy of it on my local system. So just wget that and just throw it into the same the same folder here, which you wouldn't really want to do in practice, but I'm just being lazy. So now we have this script. What I'm just going to do is quite literally just run it against that PDF. So I'm just going to call Python 3, point it over to pdfid.py, and then provide the name of our PDF file. And when we do that, you can see we're getting some interesting information that sort of gets chopped up from this document. We can see this is another way for us to figure out, hey, is this a legitimate PDF file? You can see this tool is also looking into that header for us and saying, hey, this is in fact a legitimate document. I was able to sort of parse through the different components of it as well. And so it's breaking down the different sort of objects, the fundamental elements sort of that are used within the file, right? So we might see things like URLs or JavaScript that you can see here. We're seeing some page objects as well, which are sort of standard and default. A lot of this is sort of standard that you'll see with every PDF. But there are this idea of risky actions or risky objects that you might see within PDFs that sometimes result or have the potential to result in malicious activity. JavaScript being one of them. JS, same kind of thing. So JavaScript. Open actions, something you want to look out for as well. Launch as well. The launch object is to actually run something when the sort of PDF opens up, depending on, of course, what sort of PDF viewer you're using. A lot of them, if you open it up in a browser, for example, it's not going to really launch anything. So there are certain limitations, but again, there are certain things that you might want to look out for. If there were any embedded URLs that could be clicked on within the PDF, we would also see its own sort of object here. We can also see the count of, hey, how many JavaScript objects did we find, for example? So in this case, we can see one. So this is how we can sort of cut up a PDF without actually opening it and seeing, what is inside. And of course, this is also really easily scriptable as well. And so I was going to look up. Let me see if I can find it. Risky objects. Yeah, so if you look up Lenny Zeltzer, he does a lot of good forensic kind of stuff. And he has this cheat sheet with a lot of these things that I was just talking about when it comes to malicious documents or maldocs or PDF files as well, right? So sort of a cheat sheet here on things you might want to look for, things you might want to look at, different tools you can use as well. So I thought I would just mention that as well. So if you just do a Google for malicious document cheat sheet, it should be the first thing that comes up. But again, this sort of idea of risky tags or risky objects, like those open actions, like those, right here. So risky PDF keywords, right? So we have open actions, we have JavaScript, URI. So again, if there's a embedded URL potentially in phishing, which you'll commonly see, right? So a lot of times you'll get if you're dealing with a phishing email, I know in my day I saw a lot of PDF documents because again, typically enterprises and organizations allow you to share PDFs and send them over email because it's so commonly used in the workplace, right? If it's an invoice or some sort of documentation, typically that's never going to be blocked at the email gateway level, right? And so you get a lot of PDFs coming in, and a lot of times when you're dealing with phishing with PDF attachments, you might see like a blurred image that looks like it's some sort of document, and then it says there's some sort of call to action, like click here to unblur or like click here to unlock the file, that kind of thing, right? Let me see if I can pull up an example. Phishing PDF. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about, but that was one of the most common things. Something like this, right? So it's just an image of a file. It's not actually a file that they embed in the PDF. And then they say, you can view it on Adobe or whatever. A lot of times you'll see it with invoices. Yeah, for sure. So again, this is a good way to sort of identify that if we see a URI object, for example. But again, the open actions and the launch objects as well, very useful. So just aside from that little aside there, I did want to look in some of these things too, right? So if we look at JavaScript, we can look at the open action. And to do that, I'm going to use another tool from the sort of Didier Stevens suite there. So if I look up PDF-parser, just in Google, we should be able to find it. Yeah, we can find the tool there. Let me just find it on GitHub. For some reason, Google thinks I'm in mobile right now. I think my user agent, for some reason, is saying I'm a mobile device. And so I have this very ugly search result page. Nope, that's not it. Let me try pdfparser.py. There we go. There it is. All right, so I'm going to grab this tool as well. Very just lightweight, simple script here. And we don't really need to run the ID there. I just wanted to sort of have an aside to look at the different objects. We could do all of our analysis just using the PDF parser tool itself, because it's really what's going to break down those different objects and tell us, hey, what's embedded inside of those. And so to that, I can just call Python 3 PDF parser.py and just provide, again, the same sort of name there. And it's going to provide a lot longer of an output because it's really just opening up those different objects and telling us, what is included. And so what we could do is like pipe this over to a file, pdf.txt, for example, and then use some sort of like code editor to sort of go through that, or use different scripts, for example. But we can also search using the syntax as well, which is a little bit hard to remember, but I think it's just TAC S, and then we can say, hey, what object do we want to look for? And so in this case, if we wanted to look for URIs or different URLs, we could run that. Doesn't look like there are, which we saw from our PDF ID tool, right? But we have things like JavaScript, right? So we can just search for those. Nope, maybe not. I thought there was. Oh, maybe I need to include that before. Or maybe not. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to pipe it over to a file and do it manually. Sometimes the syntax is a bit hard to remember. I think it's trying to... No, that's not going to work either. Okay, I'm just going to pipe it over to a file and do it manually. I could look in the help documentation, but I'm being lazy. So let's try to just, we can open it in Sublime Text. Oh, I know why. I'm using the wrong tool. I'm using PDF ID to do that. Yeah, that's why. I'm like, why does that output look different? Yeah, we want to use PDF parser. Okay, let's sort of do that. Let me also move myself up to the top. Nope. I'm just going to try to move myself so I'm not blocking the view. There we go. That should be better. Okay, yeah, so I was using the wrong tool. That's why I was like, what is going on? So again, we want to call readme.pdf, and that's going to print out everything, but that's not what we want. And I'm hiding it again. I'm just going to hide myself completely. Nope. Yeah, I'm going to move in the middle. That should be fine. Okay. Yeah. So again, this time I'm going to search for any JavaScript objects. There we go. So now it's working. Once I use the right tool, imagine that. And so in this case, it looks like we have some JavaScript that is appears to be trying to export a file called README. So that's not super interesting, but it is kind of suspicious that there is some JavaScript running. I assume if we call JavaScript itself, it's sort of like an alias. It's typically going to find the same information in either of those objects. And so now what I'm going to do is move myself back. I've never had that problem before. Maybe if I make myself smaller and I make myself a circle, now it'll work. All right. So the other one I wanted to look at, again, the open actions or the launch object as well. So again, sometimes it's just a matter of going through them and seeing if there's anything of value. In this case, nothing too crazy here. We might have to look into some of these other objects to sort of make sense of what it's doing. But we also have that launch object as well. And there we go. So that's most likely what we're looking for. Again, if you do see the launch object, that is typically something you want to look out for. Again, just as that sort of risky object or that known sort of thing that does get abused. And so in this case, it looks like we have the syntax is a little weird, but it looks like we're running the cmd.exe executable, right? So the way this works in theory is that if you were to open this if you were to open the PDF, readme.pdf, in a PDF viewer that is susceptible to like running launch or open actions when you do open up a PDF, it's going to attempt to open up, in this case, the command line or the sort of terminal, right? You could think of on Windows, the cmd.exe executable. It's going to open that up in the system32 directory, and it's also going to append these arguments here. So in this case, it's the capital Q here is to open up in quiet mode, so you're not actually going to see the sort of black, console window open up, right? And then C here, I believe, is to close after whatever you tell it to execute happens, right? So again, some stealthy sort of tricks here or arguments appended to the command executable for the attacker to sort of obfuscate themselves or sort of hide whatever they're trying to run. And then we sort of get into the meat of what is going on here, which again is kind of confusing to go through. It's kind of like well, we can break it down. And so in this case, it looks like we're changing directory over to the home path of the user that opened it, right? So C /users/ James or whoever, opens it. And then it's checking if on the desktop, the readme.pdf exists. And so it's saying, if this file exists, desktop/readme.pdf, then it's going to move over to the desktop. This is really weird. And then it's going to check if it exists in my documents, right? So it's basically through trial and error trying to figure out where this file is saved, which is a funny way to sort of go about this. So it's checking my documents. If it finds it there, it's going to move over into that directory. It's also going to check just the documents directory. It's also going to check... okay, this looks like Spanish and mis documentos. So it's checking my documents in Spanish as well, which is funny. So maybe we're getting some information about sort of the attribution of this threat actor, right? So they're anticipating potentially having a Spanish my documents folder, right? I've never actually used Windows in Spanish. I don't know if they actually call it that. So that's interesting to know. But anyways, it's going through iteratively, trying to figure out where this document is saved, and then it's trying to move into that document just so it can call start readme.pdf. For some reason, it just wants to open itself back up. And then it looks like we have some line breaks, and then it's saying to view encrypted content, please tick do not show this message again and press open. Which is kind of contradicting the fact that it's going to close and open in quiet mode, but I digress. But it seems to be attempting some sort of social engineering here to get the user to click on something through this launch action, which is interesting. Typically, you'll see like a dropper or some sort of like download cradle sort of embedded in here. Maybe it's calling PowerShell, invoke web request or something, or IEX to sort of execute something in memory, and so it doesn't touch disk, that kind of thing. But I guess this is just kind of a nice little example of what you might find here, right? So there are some samples you can get. And I believe in the SOC 101 course, we actually go through a sample where there is a download cradle that sort of gets executed. But yeah, it's a nice little way to sort of break that down. And so let's head back to... so we know this, right? What OS does it exploit? That's going to be Windows, of course. A Windows executable is mentioned in the PDF file. What is it? I'm assuming they mean command.exe, right? I didn't see any other executables, but what we can do is just do a grep for cmd, or no, just do a grep for exe. Yeah, that seems to be the only match there. So I'm assuming that's what they mean. But again, that could be any sort of executable you want to run. That sort of gets embedded there. And then how many suspicious open action elements does the file have? We actually saw that through our PDF ID command, right? So let me go back up and run that. Whoops, I need to provide the file. And if we look at open actions, we just have one, right? As we sort of looked at before. So that's going to do it for this one, I think. There we go. I don't know if I'd rate that medium. That was pretty... I kind of drew out some parts just because I wanted to sort of, go in more detail about what I'm doing. Because again, this could have been like a 5-minute kind of challenge, but that was cool, right? We got to work with a USB image. We got to take a look at auto run files and what they sort of do, and then kind of work through looking at how we can identify the correct file type of a file by looking at their magic bytes or magic numbers. And then we actually got to break down a PDF safely using some of those, again, those forensic kind of tools to break down the structure and figure out, hey, what is going on within this PDF. So hopefully you enjoyed that. That was a little bit easier than I would have expected, but it did take me a bit longer than I thought, just because I went into some tangents there. So we can save this other one here. This is a compromised WordPress scenario that we can save that for a future stream. I thought I would be able to bang out 2 of them quickly, but yeah, kind of drew out this one, which is fine, right? But we can return to some Q&A before we call it, because yeah, that was cool. That was a cool little challenge. I think without those Python tools, it should take a little bit longer. Yeah, but typically, typically you'd want to use a tool like that to your advantage, or a script like that. It is a little bit difficult to sort of break down a PDF natively just by using like, the command line and using something like strings, or, at the end of the day, you're doing sort of static analysis here on the file. We want to be using a tool. It doesn't have to be the PDF parser, for example, but there are many tools like that that will break down those objects for you. Those are just the most common tools out there that do that, and ones that are commonly used and recommended. So yeah, it's nice to get exposure to those for sure. This stream made my day. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let me return without my face blocking everything. Whoops. Oh, there we go. I'm just going to leave it at that before I break anything else. So let me return to the chat. We have some pinned questions. Would XXD work? Yes. I believe that's what I used. But you could also use You could use hex dump as well. There are other tools you can use as well, just like little command line tools to sort of break down, those hex bytes. So yeah, any kind of tool that's going to sort of parse the data in that way is going to sort of help you out there. All right. Let me head over to the pin questions. How often people get confused when you tell them about your IT security role or title? Yeah, I just tell people I'm a consultant. Like I've always just sort of, um, especially like I've never been a penetration tester, but many of my friends are, and many people I work with at TCM are. So I can only imagine the conversations with someone who has never heard of cybersecurity jargon or lingo before, and you tell them that you're a penetration tester. It's kind of funny, but yeah, I just keep it brief. Try not to get too talk about myself too much. What are you teaching and why is it helpful for cybersecurity beginner? I assume you meant the lab that we did. Yeah, I think the lab was pretty interesting in terms of, we got to sort of break down uh, the incident and sort of an analyst perspective and sort of triage it in a way that you might would in the SOC. So we used some different tools. We sort of asked and answered some of those investigative questions that you might think about when you're going through something like that. And we identified some indicators of compromise too, right? So that would be good for documentation. Again, typically instead of that weird open action we identified, typically you'd see like a download cradle or some sort of dropper file. And so we might be able to get some more indicators or IOCs that way in terms of like a URL or a domain name or IP address, right? More blue team content, please. Yes, for sure. That is definitely in the works as we speak. Is SOC 201 a deeper dive into host and malware forensics and threat hunting? Yeah, good question. So the way I was describing it earlier, I was talking with Alex and Bellini. We were having one of our meetings, and I'm really excited for the 201 course because I feel like the SOC 101 course is sort of like a hand-holding way to sort of get introduced into sort of the analysis methodology and working with a ton of like learning how to use a bunch of standard and common tools that you're going to use in the SOC, and also just how you do things like dig into a PCAP, for example. How do you do log analysis? How do you work with Splunk, for example? How does threat intelligence come into play with all of that? And sort of the basics of some host-based forensics and also instant response concepts as well. And so I think the way I described it is like it's more so like you're practicing. If you were to think about like an NBA game or something, like you're practicing free throws or you're practicing dribbling, right? And the SOC 201 is more so going to be like a championship game or like a playoff game, right? In some sort of whatever sport analogy you want to think of, in the sense that it's going to be a lot higher scaled. So we're going to talk about how we can do instant response at scale and how we can do threat hunting at scale in an enterprise environment. Because the SOC 101 is sort of like, here's how you do this. Here's how you do your job on a single machine, right? Or a few machines, right? And here's how you can simulate some attacks and here's how you can detect them. The SOC 201 I'm really excited for because it's going to go into threat hunting at scale and sort of the enterprise incident response and how we can sort of do that, how we can sort of respond to thousands of endpoints in an environment, for example. And then also all of the different forensics that come into play and even a bit of malware analysis as well to sort of tie in some of that more advanced analysis methodology. And also we're going to really go into the analyst methodology as well and how we can ask the right questions, how we can think about evidence that we're identifying, and how we can use that to sort of propel investigations and think more holistically and sort of lead investigations more effectively. And so, yeah, so the I guess short answer takeaways is SOC 201 is going all in on incident response, threat hunting, and forensics at the endpoint and network level as well. And so it's going to be pretty cool. And the big thing takeaway is that it's going to be at scale. So how we can sort of do that sort of thing in the enterprise as well, which I think is kind of a curriculum that's a little bit lacking. A lot of tool-based or vendor-based trainings really focused on a specific tool or a specific methodology around tools. And not a lot of it is focused on scale as well, which I really want to make a priority. Have you done any red team study to help inform your defending skills? Yeah, I mean, a bit. I initially wanted to go down these sort of ethical hacking and penetration testing route. So I did the whole OSCP track and got that. And I thought that was a really good experience. Um, but ultimately, I enjoy blue team side much more. But I think getting that experience really helped me. I remember like sort of returning and sort of um, just understanding a lot more about the sort of Windows operating system specifically, because you think about all those different privilege escalation uh, methods that you have in terms of on the attacking side. You think about ways in which you can persist in environments, and all of that really comes into play on a defense standpoint as well. And that's something we're also going to cover in the SOC 201 is sort of mapping the MITRE attack framework and how we can sort of identify specific, more advanced attacks at different levels or different stages of an attack, right, through the MITRE attack framework, right? So is it, how are attackers executing, or how are APTs persisting, privilege escalating and credential dumping, stuff like that. So a lot of that experience comes from sort of my foray into both on the red and blue side as well. So that's why I always recommend, it is nice to have both. It's not a requirement, but it is nice to sort of look at things more holistically like that. Keyboard sounds creamy. What keyboard do you use? I would have to look it up. It is, hold on. It is a Newfie Air. I think you can see the name on it there. But yeah, it's a nice keyboard. It's a low profile, which is nice. I've tried a bunch of keyboards. You can see I have a GMMK Pro, I think it is, back there, with, I think, brown switches on it, which is nice, but I really wanted something low profile. I was getting so tired of typing because I type a lot, and so I wanted something that just not a lot of travel distance, almost like a butterfly keyboard. So I've been through a bunch of keyboards, which is funny, but I think I do like this one. Thank you for joining WireDogSec. Thanks for the live stream. I hope to see more good training from the TCM security crew. You definitely will. We have a lot of exciting things planned for the year. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the good stream. That was a big W stream. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up in just momentarily here. Going to make sure I go through some of the other pinned questions we have here before we end. But again, I do want to return and do that log analysis challenge for the WordPress site. That one looked interesting as well. So that will be a future stream, definitely. Is it recommended to delete the zip after lab? I mean, you can, right? You can always go back in and re-download it if you wanted to. There's no actual malware, I don't believe, in that PDF that we looked at. It was more so just a proof of concept, it almost seemed like. But yeah, good practice. If you want to clean up after following along, you can definitely just delete up those files. But yeah. Is there a giveaway? No, not this time, unfortunately. Maybe in a future stream, though. So definitely tune in. We do this every Wednesday at around 12 Eastern or noon. And so with that, I think we will call it a day. So I want to thank you all for joining. Yeah, that was a fun little mini challenge there. Thank you all for joining, as I said, and I hope to see you in a future stream. If you have any other questions or want to reach me, just hop into the TCM Discord. We'll definitely keep chatting there if you want to. And with that, again, thank you all. I will see you in a future TCM stream.